research design is to make predictions and also make explanations for the social phenomena which has taken place. Because once you are going to study what has happened, how it has took place, who has done all these things, at the time you'll be also making explanation about the event or phenomena or social issue. At the same time, you can also make predictions, because if the same sort of situation arises, we can also predict what will be the consequences or what will be the actions of the people. It always describes about the research situations, my dear friends, which helps us in making predictions. Okay, now let us discuss about the types of, or else let us discuss about the characteristics of descriptive research design. There are four distinctive characteristics of this descriptive research design. The first one is quantitative research. Whenever the researcher wishes to gather the information from a large chunk of people or from more respondents, my dear friends, and turn that into numerical data and also make a statistical analysis of the data, then we will go for this descriptive research design. It is a quantitative research, my dear friends. The second one is it is uncontrolled. It is going to use uncontrolled variables, because the main aim of this research design is to explain what happened rather than why it happened, my dear friends. So it is not going to use neither the independent nor the dependent variables. It is going to study the situation as it is, my dear friends. So we are not going to control the variables. So it is uncontrolled variable. That is the second characteristics of this design. The third one is cross-sectional studies. It is generally a cross-sectional study when different sections belong to the same group are studied. Different section of the people within the same group are going to be studied. So that is the reason why we call it as cross-sectional studies. For example, recently, the central government has removed this Article 370 and 35A. So at the time, some of the journalists, some of the research agencies, they tried to collect the opinion or the of the people who are there in Jammu and Kashmir and the people who are there in the other states within the same country. So at the time, what we are going to do better? We are going to study it or take the opinion of the people who are there in Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the people who are there within the country. We call it as cross-sectional studies. It is going to help us. Okay, it is possible when we are going to have a sampling procedure which is rigorously taken up, my dear friends. And the last one is the basis for further research. Whatever the data we have gathered, and based on the analysis, my dear friends, it will always give scope for the other people to do further studies in that area or in that domain. So it is going to help us in further studies. So these are the four objectives of this research design. Now let us discuss about the types of descriptive research design. There are three main types of descriptive research methods. The first one is observation. Observation means to see something with a purpose. Remember, see and observe, there is plenty of difference. See means you can see anything which is happening, but if you're going to see anything with a purpose, then we call it as observation. My dear friends, when we were in school, our teachers have taught us like, whenever you want to cross the road, you see to the left and to see the right. Why we are going to see to the left and right? To observe whether there is any traffic or vehicles coming, so that we will not be met with an accident and we will not face trouble. That means you are going to see to the left and right so that you can protect yourself. That is what our teachers have taught. The same way here, when you go to the vegetable market, what do you do better? You're a good observer. Based on the purpose, you're going to decide where to purchase and how much quantity you want to purchase, my dear friends. For example, when we go to the market, we go across the market to see where the vegetables are fresh and where they are going to sell it for cheaper price. And based on that, we are going to purchase the vegetables near a vendor. And if you want to cook on the same day, you're going to take the ripened vegetables. Or if you want to cook it after a week's time, then you're going to take the kachap vegetables like. That means you're going to see something with a purpose. So here we are going to use observation as a method to gather the information from the respondents. There are two main categories of this observation, my dear friends. One is observe the people in the natural settings. We call it as naturalistic observation. And if you're going to put the variables to condition to study the cause and effect relation, then we go for laboratory experiments. We call it as laboratory observation. So we'll be either using natural observation or else laboratory observation, my dear friends. The next one is case study method. Case study is nothing but an in-depth study about an individual, a group of people, an institution, or a society at large. So we are going to take any village, a school, a hospital, or organization, or any phenomena, and we are going to study in depth about that particular case or situation. Then we call it as case study. The third one is survey method. That means we are going to gather the information from each and every household or from each and every individual who is there in that particular locality which we have selected for the study, my dear friends. In that, we will be either using interview schedule or questionnaire method. So if the research, if you want to study about the cause and effect, we'll be going for structured interview, my dear friends. That means you're going to prepare the questions well in advance and you're going to pose the questions, the same questions to each and every individual, my dear friends. And we gather the information, we turn the data into the statistical data, and we also put that data for statistical analysis, my dear friends. So the third one is survey method. About the advantages of descriptive research design. The first one is collection of data. The data collection includes case study, observation, survey, and so on. That means the researcher can gather the information using either of these tools, my dear friends. He has a lot of freedom in terms of selecting the tools. And the data which has been collected is more reliable and it has more validity compared than the other tools, my dear friends. And whatever the data we have gathered, we can put that data for statistical testing so that we can check whether our hypothesis is right or wrong also. At the same time, my dear friends, sometimes there can also be errors. Like whenever we are going to gather the information, there can be subjective bias or else the researcher's bias also, my dear friends. So whenever there is a researcher's bias, at the time we will not be able to gather the information which is right or accurate, and the data will not be fruitful or the research will not be fruitful. Along with this, my dear friends, sometimes we can also gather the information to examine the life experiences of the individual, And this will provide more insights into the life experiences of the individuals. However, it also has its more disadvantages because life experiences are subjective and may pose challenge for validity. And regarding the reliability of the data, my dear friends, the data which we have collected, we said that it can be put to scientific design and testing also. But when the questionnaire and interview schedules include pre-tested reliable instruments of data collection, the data will be good enough. But if there are errors in terms of preparing the questionnaire or interview schedule, then we will not be getting the required data. So there can be vacuum in our research, my dear friends. So this about descriptive research design. Then we'll go for experimental research design. The name itself says that the researcher wants to study the cause and effect relation between the variables, my dear friends. The main aim of the experimental research is to study the study about the phenomena or anything, and which helps us in predicting the future ones. Its main duty is to explain the cause effect on each aspect, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about the characteristics of experimental research design. We have said that there are two types of variables, independent variables and dependent variables. We have already discussed about these variables in the previous classes, if you remember. The dependent variables will be influenced by the independent variables. So we want to study about the cause and effect relations on this dependent variable. The main characteristics are the researcher has the freedom to manipulate the independent variables. For example, I want to study the opinion of people or young college students on marriage system or type of marriage. For example, if I'm going to ask the kid in the class like whether you prefer to go for arranged marriage or love marriage, then in front because the parents are not there, so obviously he may say that some students may say that we prefer love marriage or some students may prefer arranged marriage. Then I'm going to put the independent variable, nothing but the parents. And in front of parents, I'm going to ask the children like whether you prefer love or arrange. So their decisions may vary, my dear friends. It may be the same or it may not be the same. So the researcher has the freedom to manipulate the independent variables. The second one is they decide the nature and the extent of treatment. Because most of the time, these uh, experiments are done in the hospitals, in the trauma centers, in the laboratories and industrial sociology, wherever, my dear friends. Okay. So here, what we are going to do, we are going to see to what extent these experiments are going to be helpful in terms of treatment. For example, there was a study taken up in America. It was to study about the belief system. Like, so a patient has been admitted to the hospital one fine day with multiple injuries, with multiple fractures. So one fine day, the doctor went to the patient because the patient trusted in the doctor, believed in him. So even the doctor went to him and he gave some medicine. And while giving this medicine, he told the patient, saying that, see, I'm giving this medicine. It is the best medicine which can cure your wounds, but the pain will be the same. So he gave the injection and he left the hospital. The next day, when he approached the patient, he asked, "How did you feel?" Then the patient said, "Sir, as you said that, I can see that my wounds are healing, but the pain was severe. I could not sleep the whole night." But do you know what was there in the medicine like? It was morphine. It was number one painkiller. Actually, because the person believed in the doctor and whatever the doctor has said, he believed in that, and the same thing happened to him. Actually, it was a painkiller and it was supposed to remove the pain from the person, but unfortunately, what happened, the patient felt that his wounds are healing, but the pain was same. The next day, he went to the patient and he said that I'm giving the best painkiller for you, and today, after a long time, you can have a sound sleep. And he gave the medicine and he left. And the next day, when he went to the patient said, "Sir, after a long time, I could have a sound sleep." And you know what was there in that beta? Actually, he has simply given saline water for the patient. It was not morphine, it was saline. The next day, even then, the patient could have a sound sleep. So, here, what we do, beta, we are going to see, we are going to decide the nature and the extent of treatment which is going to take place. And the next one is we are also going to administer the treatment even after giving it. So we can measure before how it was and later how it is like. So this experimental research design will help us to make a comparison between the past and the present, my dear friends, especially in terms of clinical trials. Now let us discuss about the types of experimental research design. The first one is pre-experimental research design. In this design, there will be a single respondent or a single group or groups which are kept under observation after considering the factors for cause and effect relation. It is usually conducted to understand whether further investigation is required or not, my dear friends, on the target sample. So this kind of experiments, we call it as pre-experimental research design. This can be classified into three types, my dear friends. One short case study research design. In this, the single group of test is exposed to an experimental treatment and a single measurement is taken for the study, then we call it as one shot case study research design. The other one is one group pre-test, post-test research design. That means they are going to study the people before the test has been taken up or the treatment has been given to the people, and after the treatment has been provided, what the results that is also studied. That means we call it as one group pre-test and post-test research design. You must have seen some advertisements in the TV like Lab LA, all these hair transplantation advertisements will be. In that, they are going to show people before treatment how the person is and after treatment how the person is. That we call it as one group pre-test, post-test research design. The third one is static group comparison. In this, the researcher is going to use two groups or two individuals, and they are going to put the people for treatment, and then they are going to measure the differences between the two individuals or two groups. Then we call it as static group comparison. All these three comes under pre-experimental research design. Now let us go for the second one, true experimental research design. In this, it enables the researcher to test the hypothesis accurately using statistical analysis. In this, the participants are selected randomly, not all the people, not in a zigzag way, but we are going to select the people randomly for our study, my dear friends. And the researcher has to has a complete control over the variables. So the experimental research design, the researcher will be able to assess
Sir, your voice is not audible, sir.
Hello.
ఇప్పుడు వినిపిస్తుంది
Hello.
సార్.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So true experimental, we are going to select the people randomly. At the same time, the researcher has the freedom or control over the independent variables and is also going to put the data for statistical experiments or testing, my dear friends. There are three important preconditions for a true experimental research design. The sample consisting of respondents must be randomly selected or assigned into two groups, my dear friends. One group is called as the control group and the other one is called as experimental group. So in one group, my dear friends, we are not going to control anything. They are going to do the activities as usual, whereas the other group will be put for experimentation. And then we are going to make a comparison between the two groups, my dear friends. While doing the experiments, my dear friends, the researcher has freedom to manipulate the variables also. He also has the freedom to experiment it. There are different types of true experimental research designs. The first one is post-test only design. It consists of two groups, and we are going to keep one group under experimentation and the other one as usual, my dear friends. And after the examination or experiment is done, we are going to make the analysis. We are going to make the comparison between the two groups, my dear friends. Then we call it as post-test only design. But if you want to compare them before testing and after testing, then we call it as pre-test, post-test only design. Then the third one is we are going to call it as Solomon 4-group design. In this, we are going to have four groups. The participants are randomly assigned into four groups, my dear friends, and out of which two groups, experimental E1 and E2, One will be selected, and out of the control group C1 and C2, one will be selected for the study for pre-test as well as for post-test, my dear friends. Then we call it as Solomon four-group design. The fourth one is factorial design. In this, the researcher manipulates two or more independent variables simultaneously to observe their effects on the dependent variable. This design allows for testing of two or more hypotheses in a single project, my dear friends. Then we call it as factorial design. Then the next one is randomized block design. This design is used when there are inherent differences between subjects and possible differences found in the conditions, my dear friends. Then we go for randomized block design. If there are a large number of experimental groups, the randomized block design may be used to bring some homogeneity in each and every group, my dear friends. Then the next one is crossover design. In this, the participants are exposed to more than one treatment, and they are randomly designed to different orders of treatment. The groups are compared which have an equal distribution of characteristics, and there is a high level of similarity among the subjects which are exposed to different conditions. Same time of people, same characteristics, and these people are put on to different conditions, my dear friends, and then we are going to study them. Then we call it as crossover design. We can also call it as repeat measure design. The next one is quasi experimental research design. The word quasi indicates that it is similar or resemble. They are almost the same. A quasi-experimental research design is similar to experimental research design, but it's not exactly the same. The difference between the two is the assignment of control group. In this research design, an independent variable is manipulated, but the participants of the group are not randomly assigned as per the conditions. Remember that. There is only difference there. We are going to select the groups randomly. The members are selected randomly, whereas here the participants of the group are not randomly assigned to as per the conditions. Now let us discuss about the advantages of this research design, experimental research design. The first one is researcher has greater control over the variables to conduct the experiment. He has a wide application from clinical research in medicine, psychology, to that of educational field, and so on. The results which we are going to get through this design are more scientific. Once the results are analyzed, they can be applied to various other similar aspects also. At the same time, it also helps us to study the cause and effect relation between the dependent and the independent variables. So we are also going to test our hypothesis, and it gives a greater details about our research. But this research also has its own disadvantages. The first one is it can be prone to researchers' bias, because when we are going to select the respondents randomly, I may pick the people whom I like, or else who are going to give the good feedback about the particular organization or policy. I may select them randomly, so obviously it may lead to problems. So there can be a researcher bias. The next one is it is difficult to use. It is very difficult to use because it will be very, very difficult for us to measure the variables and its impact on the other variables, my dear friends. It will be too difficult for us to measure it. The third one is sometimes there may be sometimes ethical or practical problems with variable control. When you're going to control the variable, sometimes it may also lead to certain problems also. Participants can be influenced by social and cultural factors. These are the major disadvantages of this experimental research design. Then we'll go further. Next lesson, sampling. Sociologists, their main duty is to study, or they mainly aim at studying the social phenomena in an objective way and in a scientific manner. In your first principles of sociology, your teacher must have taught you like sociology is a scientific study about the human beings or about the human society. August.com has first person to study the sociology, but he has tried to study the society in a holistic way and in the scientific way. That is the reason why he is regarded as the father of sociology. So here our main duty is to study the society or social phenomena in an objective way and a scientific way, my dear friends. So gathering the information from each and every respondent is not an easy task. It takes a lot of time, it requires a lot of money, and it also requires a lot of human resource. So for that reason, what we do, we are going to select a sample, put that sample for testing, and whatever the results are there, we are going to apply to the entire population. Sociologists and some scientists have said that even while by doing a study on a small sample, if you are going to get the same results, then what is the need for us to study on a larger population, because it involves a lot of money, time, and human resource. So now let us discuss what is this sample in detail. A sample is nothing but a representative from a larger population. The representation from a larger population. For example, all the people who are sitting in the state assembly, they are the representatives of the people, and the people have elected their representatives. Whereas here in the research, my dear friends, the researcher is going to select the respondents based on the sampling method or based on the purpose of the study, my dear friends. So it is nothing but the representation of the data of the larger population. The important prerequisite for drawing a sample from a population is sampling frame. Sampling frame is nothing but the list of the sampling units who are there in the particular place or particular research area. Just like you have a photo frame, and within the photo frame you are going to keep the picture, the same way here we are going to have the sampling frame. Sampling frame is nothing but the list of all the people who are there in that particular area or in the particular society on whom we are going to conduct the study. Okay. Now let us go for the aims of sampling. The main aim is to study the entire population, but it's not possible. So we are going to pick few people, study them, and put the results to the entire population because of the size, because of time constraints, because of cost constraints, and so on, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about census method and sampling method. In the census method, my dear friends, we are going to gather the information from each and every individual or household which is there in that particular state or particular locality or research area. Then we call it as census methods. In the country, the government of India is going to gather the information from each and every household once in every 10 years, and they're going to publish that in the form of census reports, my dear friends. They are going to collect once in every 10 years. So there must be a question from your side. Sir, why they are going to gather the information only once in every 10 years? My dear friends, because it requires a lot of money, it consumes a lot of time, money, and human resource, and the government is not in a position to bear all these things. For that reason, they are going to gather the information once in every 10 years. The second one is sampling method. When a small group is selected as a representative of the entire population, then this method is called as sampling method. In the sampling method, a small group of individuals are selected from the entire data and the information from the entire population, and the data or information is gathered. The results are generalized and is applied to the entire population, then we call it as sampling method. Now let us discuss about the characteristics of sample. The first one is it is representative, because we are going to study on a population with the specific features. So obviously you select some people and you're going to put that people, gather the information, collect the data and put that for testing and analysis. And the results will be applied to the entire population. It can happen only when people have the same features, same characteristics. If there is difference, if it's not a homogeneous, if it's a heterogeneous group, then you cannot go for this sampling one. The next one is accuracy. There is less or absence of sample bias, my dear friends. We are going to have we are going to select the people based on scientific methods and whatever the data which is there. We're also going to put that for statistical or scientific analysis, my dear friends. So the data will be accurate. The third one is precision. The sample must yield precise estimate. It is measured by standard error or standard deviation of the sample estimate. The smaller the standard error, the higher is the precision of the sample. Last one is the size. A good sample must have adequate size in order to be reliable. Okay, so if we are going to have a good sample size, then the data which we gather will be accurate, my dear friends. Then let us go for sample size. There are two major factors affecting the power of the study. That is the sample size and the effect size. The larger the sample size is, the smaller the effect size, my dear friends, that can be detected. The reverse is true. The small sample size, then we can detect large effect sizes in terms of variables. A higher confidence level requires a larger sample size. This is the probability which we find in statistical significance evidence of difference between two groups or more, my dear friends. So how to calculate the sample size, my dear friends? If you see in page number 72, there is a formula capital N is equal to small n divided by 1 plus n into E square, where n is equal to total population, E is nothing but degree of freedom, which is equal to 0.05. Using this formula, we can calculate the actual sample size, my dear friends. However, if you want to gather the information from the people, like in India, we have 135 plus crores of population. And if we are going to employ that population size in this formula, then we are going to get 13.5 crore people. So gathering the information from 13.5 crore population is also an Herculean task. It takes a lot of time. It requires a lot of money. It also requires a lot of human resource. So that is the reason Trees and Morgan, they are two statisticians, my dear friends. They have come up with the table in the year 1970. And they said, what if the population is size is so and so, what must be the sample size, my dear friends? If you see the table, for 10, you are going to gather the information from 10 people. From 60 people means we are going to gather the information from 52 people. And if the population is nearly 1 lakh, then we are going to have the sample size of 384, my dear friends. They have used the statistical methods and they have said that if the population is this much, then what must be the sample size? Now let us discuss about the advantages of this sampling. As we have said, gathering the information from all the people is not possible. It takes a lot of time. So selecting few people, studying them, obviously what happens? You can save time. It saves time. At the same time, it also saves money. It also, we require less human resource to gather the information from the people. And we can also cover a large area using this sample method in a short time. These are the three advantages of this sampling method. However, it also has its own disadvantages. The first one is it can be prone to bias. When we are going to select the respondents, there can be researcher's bias, my dear friends. Second one is sampling is complex because as individuals and households may vary in terms of parameters. We may not have homogeneous category, my dear friends. That is the second problem. And the third one is sampling is prone to sampling errors. When we are going to pick the people, sometimes there can also be errors. So these are the three disadvantages of this sampling. Now let us discuss some of the concepts which we use in sampling method. The first one is universe or population. The population or universe represent the entire group of units on which the researcher is going to focus or study, my dear friends. For example, if I want to study the opinion of the BA fourth semester students studying in Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, then all the students who are in BA fourth semester scattered across Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, they are going to become the universe or the population for our study, my dear friends. The second one is sample size. The units or which are selected from the population units is called as sample size. The third one is sampling frame. It contains or the units who are there in that particular area or in that universe or population. The fourth one is sampling error. The errors which arise in the selection of units for the when we are going to select the respondents, that we call it as sampling error. In order to overcome this sampling errors, the researcher has to adopt probability sampling techniques in the selection of samples. We have discussed, like sampling can be classified into two types. One is probability sampling and the other one is non-probability sampling. So here we will be using sampling, probability sampling when we have the list of all the people to be studied with the specific features or characteristics. If we do not have the information, then we will be going for non-probability sampling. So here, if you want to reduce the error, it is better we go for probability 1. So here the error can be classified into two types. One is biased error and the other one is unbiased error. If the researcher is going to commit any mistakes or if he is going to have any bias when he is going to select the respondents, then we call it as biased error. We call it as bias because the researcher has shown some bias in selecting the units or the population. And the second one is unbiased error. It may be either accidentally or arise in natural course of event without any bias, then we call it as unbiased error. The researcher has not committed any mistake, but accidentally it happened. There were some errors when the person has taken up the research, then we call it as unbiased error. Now let us discuss about the methods of sampling or the types of sampling, my dear friends. We have discussed that there are two types of sampling. One is probability and the other one is non-probability sampling. About these two samplings, we'll be studying in the next lesson, that is 9. The first one is probability sampling. When we have the information about the people with the specific features or characteristic to be studied, then we call it as, we go for probability sampling, my dear friends. In this probability sampling, each and every individual, each and every respondent has equal chances of being selected. Then we call it as probability 1. Okay. Now, let us discuss about the prerequisites of this probability sampling. According to Black and Champion, they have mentioned about four prerequisites of this probability sampling. The first one is we require the complete list of all the people who are there in that universe. We require the complete list of the subjects or the population who are there in that. For example, if I want to take the opinion of voters on elections, like to which political party they have casted their vote. So for that, what I require, beta? I require the complete list of the voters. If I want to take the opinion of the students on so-and-so particular teacher, then I require the list of all the students who are in 4th semester studying in Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. So the first thing which we require is we require a complete list of the subjects. The second one is we must have the clarity about the size of the universe. That is must, my dear friends. Without knowing the size, you will not be able to use the probability sampling. The third one is desired sample size. When you know the population, when you know the universe, like what is the total population with the specific features to be studied, then the next one is what is the desired sample. Either you go for black and Riesenberger, or else you use the formula capital N is equal to small n divided by 1 plus n into e square. Either using the formula or the table, you can also decide your sample size. And the last one which we require is each element or unit must have equal chances of being selected. These are the four prerequisites of probability sampling method. Now let us discuss about the types of probability sampling. The first one is simple random sampling. A simple random sampling take a small portion of the entire population which represents the entire data set where each member has equal chances of being selected or drawn. Then we call it as simple random sampling. In this simple random sampling, the first one is lottery method. You must have seen at the time of festivals, some government shops, showroom, they give this offer, lucky draws, everything. They say that you purchase the clothes or machines of worth so and so price, they'll be giving the coupons to you. They ask you to write your name and your mobile number, everything, and drop into a container. And on a particular day, a neutral person will be asked to come, mix all the cheats properly, and then he is requested to pick the number of cheats, which is equivalent to the number of prizes, my dear friend. Okay, and whoever name is there, for them we are going to say that you have got a car in the lucky draw, or else you got worth 1 lakh gifts so and so like. The same way here, what we do better, we are going to write the names of all the people on a small sheet and drop into a container. Ask the person, a neutral person, to come and pick the sheet which is equivalent to our sample size. And whoever's name is there, those people will be selected for our study. That we call it as lottery method. Then the next one is Tippett's table. Tippett has taken 10,400 four-figure numbers, and he has turned that into 41,600 digits from the census reports, which is combined them into fours to give his random number. So he has given a list of numbers. Then what he does, he asks a neutral person to say a number. For example, he says that I am going to pick all the units between 2,500 to 6,500. We shall select 10 such figures from the above random numbers. So whatever the random numbers are there, from that we are going to select the people. Or else what the person can say, I want 6. So out of these 4 digits, if any 6 number is there, so all those people will be selected for our study. And after selecting the people, if it is not equivalent to our sample size, then again we ask the person to make one more wish about a number, and he's going to repeat that till we have the sample size, my dear friend. So after the lottery method, we are going to have Tippett's table. Both these come under the simple random sampling, my dear friend. The third one is we also have use of computers. Nowadays, computers are also used for selecting the sample. Instead of using the container, writing all the names in the sheet and selecting the people, instead of that, we can also use computer to also do the same process, my dear friend. The second one is stratified random sampling. Stratification means dividing and then gathering the information from the people. Then we call it as stratified random sampling. For example, we can classify or stratify the people based on gender, based on religion, based on locality, based on education qualification, and so on. So first we are going to stratify the people and then gather the information from the people by selecting them randomly. Then we call it as stratified random sampling. For example, I want to gather the information from 100 people who belongs to different religious background. So there are 4 major religions like Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai. So what I can do now, I can simply divide this 100 divided by 4. That means I'm going to gather the information from 25 Hindus, 25 Muslims, 25 Christians, and so on. So this we call it as disproportionate stratified random sampling. Because if you see the Hindu population is around 80%, the Muslim population and Christian population around 8 to 10%. But what I'm going to do better, I'm going to gather the information from the respondents, which is equivalent to 25% of their total population, which is higher than the Hindu population, my dear friends. So we call it as disproportionate random sampling. But if you are going to derive the sample based on the total population, then we call it as stratified random population. For example, 80% are Hindus. So out of 100, you will be gathering information from 80% Hindus, 10% Muslims, 9% Christians, and 3% others, my dear friends. Then we call it as proportionate stratified random sampling. The third one is cluster sampling. It involves dividing the population into clusters and drawing a sample from the clusters. Then we call it as cluster sampling. The method is employed when the area of the study is widespread. For example, think there are slums in Hyderabad. We find slums in Jubilee Hills, Banjara Hills. We also find a slum in Chandanagar. We find in Vijayanagar also. So what we are going to do, we are going to turn these areas into clusters. Northern part of the city, southern part of the city, eastern part of the city, and likewise. You are going to turn that area into clusters. And all of these 4 clusters, again, you are going to select the places where the concentration is higher. And then you are going to select the people randomly for your study. Then we call it as cluster sampling, my dear friend. This cluster sampling will help us to study the intensity of the problem. You must have seen movies like whenever they want to show any people doing any notorious activities or illegal activities in the movies, they will be simply typing a name, that is Dulpet, my dear friends. In Dulpet area, the criminal behavior is very much higher. And do you know, if we want to make a study on this, you know, actually the people who are there in this Dulpet, actually they are not criminals, actually they were warriors, my dear friends. When the Nizams were in power, they used to import the soldiers from various parts of the world so that they can defeat any enemy across the world, my dear friends. So they have imported the soldiers from Rajasthan. So these people, they came here, they settled in Hyderabad in Nizam dynasty during the Nizam dynasty period, and they lost their contact with their ancestors who are there in Rajasthan. And because of this police action, what happened? This Hyderabad state has been merged into the Indian territory. And Nizam power has gone, his powers has been gone. And at the time, these Rajasthani people who used to work for this Nizam, right now they have lost their occupation. At the same time, they've also lost their contact with the natives who are there in Rajasthan. They did not know, they don't know what to do. At the time, the only option left over was to make something for a living. And they have used all unfair means at the initial days, my dear friends. And right now we can see that there is a slight change taking place in that area among especially the youth, my dear friends. They are being educated, they are entering into various jobs, they're also doing business. So if you want to study about these areas like where the intensity is higher, and if you want to study the problems, then it's better to use cluster sampling. Then the next one is multi-stage sampling. In the multi-stage sampling, the samples are selected in various stages. For example, the researcher wants to study about the implementation of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, which says that it's going to provide minimum 100 days employment for the unskilled or semi-skilled people across the country. And it also says that if required, the government is also going to provide employment for 365 days, nothing but across the year, my dear friend. So I want to know about the perception of these people or how this program is being implemented. So what I will do, I'm going to divide the entire country into 4 zones of like North India, Southern India, East and West. And then from the North India, I'm going to select one state, South India, one state, from East and West also, one state respectively. And I'm not going to study the entire state. Again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to select one district from the state, likewise four states, four districts, and from four districts again, I'm not going to study the entire district, but I'm going to select one village from each district so that four villages will be selected from the country for our study, my dear friends. So you are going to select the sample at different levels. That is the reason why we call it as multi-stage sampling, my dear friends. And the next one is systematic sampling. In the systematic sampling, every nth number will be selected for our study. For example, think there are 1,000 people and I want to gather the information from 100 people. So 1,000 divided by 100, that means every nth number, n is nothing but 10 here. So we are going to get 10. So you're going to have an interval of 10 between each respondent. If you're going to start at 1, then it will be 1, 11, 21, 31, 41, and so on. And if you're going to start at 5, it will be 5, 15, 25, 35, and so on. Because in this, we require an interval of minimum 10 units, my dear friend. So every nth number, that means you're going to take the total population, divided with the desired sample size, and whatever the frequency comes, that must be the frequency between each unit, my dear friend. We call it as systematic sampling. Now, these are the types of probability sampling. Now, let us discuss about the advantages of probability sampling. The first one is scientific method. In this, we are going to select the people based on scientific methods, my dear friends. We are going to use scientific methods to select the respondents. The second one is it is cost effective because we have a frame, sampling frame, and you are going to select the respondents based on the methods. And this method is very, very simple, my dear friends. There is no need for you to gather the information from large chunk of people when the results are same. Remember that. So it is going to save our money. It is going to save our time, my dear friends. At the same time, there will not be any bias, researcher's bias in terms of selecting the sample. And the last one is who has for minimum technical skills, my dear friends. Even a person who does not have any technical knowledge of sound, even that person can also apply these sampling methods, my dear friends. The last one is the sample is representative to the entire population. However, this probability sampling has its own disadvantages. First one is lack of sufficient information about the population. We said that when we do not have the information about the population, we do not have the exact figure at the time, we will not be able to select our sample properly. For example, I intend to do the study on smokers. There are plenty of smokers, but I do not have the exact number. That means I'm not going to have a sampling frame. I do not have the list of the people, or I do not have the exact number of people who are smokers or who consume alcohol or into flesh trade and so on, my dear friends. Sometimes because of lack of information, my dear friends, we cannot have a desired sample size and we cannot select the people properly. The second one is sometimes there will be a problem with the sampling frame. It consists of all the units of the population, my dear friends. But sometimes because we do not have the information, we will not be able to derive it. So these are the two disadvantages of this sampling method. Guys, are there any problems today? If there are no problems, then we'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow.
Sir, once again repeat method of collection of samples, sir. No.